I have a question for you. Are you still wondering why at times when you go to pay the bills or do anything to do with your finances, it just feels like an impossible task? It doesn't matter how many books you've read, how many podcasts you listen to, how many tips you implemented, it just feels overwhelming. It feels daunting. If this is you, you're not alone. This is what limiting stories look like, what they sound like. And it just puts a daunt or a block as to how you feel when you're managing your finances, when you're doing a certain task. Well, today you are in for a treat because I've invited a special guest, Pam Covarubias, and we're going to dive deep into this conversation, especially with a tool, something that you can have in your arsenal to help you really deal with these limiting stories when they come up for you. So don't go anywhere. Bienvenida to Her Dinero Matters, the podcast helping Latinas have increased confidence and control over their finances. I am Jen Hemphill, and over the years, I've been on a mission to empower countless of women like you through this podcast and through my financial counseling services. Now, my expertise isn't just a result of my own life experiences or a few Google searches. I also became an accredited financial counselor that helps me serve you at a higher standard. Now, if you've been liking what you're seeing and hearing, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss a thing. Now, let's get the show started. Limiting money stories. We all have them. They cause stress, overwhelm, they cause a sense of just not being able to see the light at the end of the tunnel. They just make you feel like you will never get ahead with your finances. And you're not alone with this. Navigating them requires some tools and just doing some of the deep work, which is why our special guest, Pam Covarubias, is here to help us with this conversation, to help us see how this tool that you'll hear about helps us with these limiting stories or deal with them. I felt that Pam Covarubias was the perfect guest for this because she actually became the coach her immigrant mom needed, and she employs trauma-informed practices that nurtures her client nervous system, and she sure knows her stuff, as you're about to hear in this conversation. And she's also the host of the critically acclaimed Café con Pam podcast, where she shares candid, thought-provoking insights from diverse voices. So you're going to need to also check that podcast out. So, what are we going to discuss in this episode? What are we going to learn? We're going to talk about what the Calladita culture is and how it affects women. And it's all intertwined with these limiting stories. And also, we're going to discuss the pesky ways in which this culture impacts our finances, our Latino culture, as well as how to use tapping to regulate our nervous system. So let's go and meet Pam. Bienvenida, Pam. I'm so thrilled to have you here. I know you've been on here, but I realized you and I haven't talked as in a one-on-one interview, and I've gotten to know you over the years. So I'm like, she has to be on, not just in a panel discussion. She has to be on. We need to get to know Pam for who she is and what she's about. So
Thank
welcome.
you. Muchas gracias for the invitation. I'm so excited.
Yes. So you and I like to talk a lot about stories because I know on your podcast, Café con Pam, which is phenomenal, by the way, for those of you
Thank you.
listening, check it out. But you love stories as well. So if you could take us back in time, cuando eras niña, doesn't matter when, where you have a memory that you know has really impacted you to this day in terms of money, your relationship to money. So if you could take us
Yeah,
back.
I have my money story very clear. I've identified it for a while now and something that I've worked on multiple times. So I was 11 years old and my parents had just recently split. And my dad was in this place where he wanted to kind of like be there. And so the way that he knew how to do it was by buying us things. And so every other weekend or whenever, I don't remember, I think it was every weekend that he would pick us up on Sunday. I think we would see him on Sundays. We would go places and he would always buy us things. And one time I wanted new shoes. And so I was like, hey, dad, can you buy me new shoes? Y me dijo, no me alcanza. Entonces, it was that moment that the no me alcanza was embedded in my brain. And then as I grew older, that just happened. I was 11 years old. As I grew older, I started making money. I realized que siempre no me alcanzaba. O sea, it didn't
Mm.
matter how much money I made. I had great salaries. I was doing sales, commissions, bonuses, all, y no importa, no me alcanzaba. And so that's when I went into this exploration of like, porque siempre pasa que no me alcanza. And that's when I went back and I realized the original story of the no me alcanza is when my dad me dijo que no le alcanzaba to buy me shoes.
I love that you share this because I share a similar story. And I love how you share it too, because it's the point of if we're not aware of those past money stories, we recycle them, we continue. And you saw that in your present life. And I have a similar story too, where it was just, I didn't hear no me alcanza, but no tenemos dinero. No
No hay
hay.
dinero. Uf.
No hay dinero. And even though the personal finance was always something that I was interested in, I think it has to do with my past money story and just growing up in Colombia in a time that economically
Mhm.
was very difficult. Also, security wise, me here, early 80s, it was very difficult. So it really impacted me, but I didn't realize till I was married 10
Wow.
years that I'm like, okay, why aren't things changing if I've read personal finance books, if I've implemented these different things that personal finance experts are telling me to do, but yet we're okay, but yet we're still struggling.
Ooh.
What's going on here? Yeah. So it took me a long time. I was in my 30s.
And
So
we don't notice those
uh
things until you get
we
to, like
don't.
like, actually digging and exploring. For me, I got tired. Like, I literally remember calling my dad because my dad is he's able to call, and so I was like, "Me hicieron ojo, like, can you check?" "Why? Porque siempre no me alcanza." And he was like, "No, you don't have any, like, bad work done on you. You need to
Mm.
work on what you believe is true." Pero I think, you know,
Okay.
in your case, you got to a place where you were like, o sea, ¿qué pasa? Y yo también. O sea, we need to get to the place where you're just fed up from the pattern repeating.
Right. And I also noticed, I don't know if it was for you, also noticed, siempre me decía mi abuelita, tenemos que estar
Oh, sí.
agradecidos por lo que tenemos. We have a roof over our
Be
head.
grateful.
My mom always said, we have a roof
Yes.
over our head. ¿Por qué necesitamos más? And I think that's a part of
Mm,
too what was because it was ingrained of me. So if I had more, I felt guilty, right? So there's
so
so much.
layered.
So I'm so glad that you share this because it just really, and this is why I do this podcast, because I think it should be part of the personal finance classes that we're teaching out in the well. There's not teaching still in many schools, but as they teach, I think they need to incorporate
Totally.
this so they don't find them. Those kids don't find themselves like
Totally.
us, right? Stuck
Mhm.
and trying to figure out what's wrong with me. Nothing's wrong with
Right.
you.
It's just a pattern.
Exactly, and it's just like any other family cycles. If we don't stop those family cycles of whether alcoholism, domestic abuse, domestic violence, it
For
continues,
sure.
right? We have to be aware.
For sure.
Oh my goodness, so good. Now, another thing that I wanted to ask you about that I'm really excited because I we haven't talked about this before, kind of just vaguely. You talk about the calladita
Mhm.
culture. So, in what you do. And so, in your work, you help people remove the damages of this calladita culture. So, if you can tell us what this is, we have an
Mhm.
idea. And why is it so important? Because obviously, you in your day-to-day work, if you will, this is what you work on with others.
For sure. Galleta culture is a concept that a lot of people in general, not just women, humans are familiar with, especially if you come from Latin America. There's the dicho, calladita te ves más bonita, and it's very rooted in Marianismo and the patriarchy and a lot, and even I could argue that even religion has
Mm,
instilled this concept of, because that's where Marianismo comes from. Marianismo is
right.
the goes back to the Virgin Mary and inviting. women into being quiet, submissive, gender roles play into this. And so what I realized is I grew up with a very Catholic grandmother, and she, I mean, you know, I talk for a living now. And so I would always get in trouble for asking way too many questions. And with her specifically, I would always ask about, like, why do you go to misa every day? Like, what's with mass? Like, why can't you just like pray at home? What's with the church? What's with the
Honest
you know,
question.
what's with the Virgen de Guadalupe? Like, why do we, like, call it the Virgen de Guadalupe when in real like, porque yo soy mexicana, looking at the history of the Virgen de Guadalupe, it's the Coatlicue, which is the actual, Mexica entity that was it's the whole thing. So I would always question it, and she would always get mad at me, and those were the first instances when I was told, like, "Don't question it. You no sigue las reglas and we just keep it moving." And so I realized at a very early age, my voice was quieted in various ways because I was too much. I was told I was too much. I was asking too many questions. I was being too loud. I was even at points too quiet. And so there was
Hmm.
always this too muchness around it. And I think the villain in the story of women that are told they're too much is Calladita culture.
And how do you feel? Because we've heard about your past money story, que no alcanza, and how that really translated, or how that came or continued in your financial life. How did this calladita culture, because you experienced it, how did that connect in your financial life, and how, or did it, and how did it
It
impact
does.
how your day to day
For
finances?
sure. Yeah, so it definitely affected me in various ways. Number 1, it kept me underpaid because I didn't have a voice to speak up and ask for more. It kept me stuck because I didn't have a voice to stand up for myself. It kept me quiet because I had the belief of, like, the being grateful. There's 5 principles of Gaeta culture, and so every single one took place in some way when it came to asking for money, because advocating for ourselves when it comes to our money, we have to use our voice and stand in our power. And so, in many ways, it's through money, actually, it's been how I know Calladita culture has affected me and how I started kind of like distilling the principles and creating all the things that I do now. It's because I started working on my money story.
Love it. So how did you heal in terms of, so how did you heal and just make that transformation from, you've had that awareness of terms of not only the carita culture, but que no te
Hmm.
alcanza, no, and where that came from. So what were the steps that you took to heal, to transform, to make a change in your life?
So the first step that I took was to create that awareness, to question, to be curious, to clarify what was happening. Primero que nada. And to backtrack a little, it's still not healed. I mean, this is work that I continuously do because it's, new level, new devil type thing. And so the
I love it.
yeah, so the more I keep working on it, the more I kind of like peel the onion and find new layers, and I'm like, "All right, well, let's go." And so, clarify number 1, when I clarified, I connected to the true version of me. So I started healing my inner child. I accepted everything that happened without blame. Then I started integrating, which is I sourced with my inner child, which is the truest version of me, is that little 3-year-old that before she was told that she was too much. I connect with her and then I source that true version of me so I can exist in the world with ease. I regulated my nervous system, super important. And then I continuously work on showing up with my inner light, which is that truest version of me, and using my voice. That's like the abbreviated version.
Love it, love it, love it. Now, so basically, and I'm curious too, because, and I have a feeling this is all tied together because this is part of all the work that you do. Let's talk
Mhm.
tapping. Because you mentioned you have to regulate your nervous system. So you help people basically, in a sense, heal their stories. Maybe not specifically money stories. Obviously, it's included, but you help them really tap into what happened with the calladita culture and their own specific scenario and their own specific experience. But the other thing that you do, and you do a lot, and I really appreciate, is the tapping. But I've done tapping, believe it or not.
Yay!
Haven't done it consistently, but I do notice the difference. So let's talk tapping for the listener right now that's tuned in and it's like, I am loving
Mhm.
this. what is it exactly? If they don't know, what is it? How is it helpful and
And
why?
why tapping? I'll just take a second to tell you how I came into tapping. Tapping is a tool. And when I was in
Okay, perfect.
college, I was told I was too much of a procrastinator. So to bring it back to the too muchness, I was
Wow.
procrastinating. And my professor literally after turning in a project, she talked to me and she was like, "Look, Pam, I'm a designer." So I went to design school and I turned in a project that I had literally worked like tirelessly for the last 48 hours without sleeping, like, and she was like, "If you had taken the month, I gave you 30 days to work on this. If you had taken the month that I gave you to work on this project, we would have been able to submit it for an award because it's that good. But because you didn't put the time, this is trash." I mean, it's not, she didn't say it like that. And so, but she was
Right.
like, "What's happening? Because I see the brilliance in you, but you're self-sabotaging it to a point where it's just not helping you grow." And so that really hit me. And I went into this place of what happens with my brain that feels broken, that I can't get things done. And that's when I realized I had ADHD. And with my ADHD
Mhm.
brain, I then went into this other rabbit hole of exploration of how do I fix what I thought was my broken brain. I now believe that my ADHD brain is a superpower because I can do so many things in so many ways that neurotypical people can't. But at the time, I didn't know what I didn't know. And so that's when I came across a YouTube video and
Right.
somebody was doing tapping. And I was like, well, I guess I'm going to try to fix this broken brain. And I realized that when I tapped, and I'll explain what tapping is, my body just felt different. I felt at a place of ease. I felt this moment of peace that I had not felt before. I felt the racing millions of racing thoughts that I had in my head calm down. And so I fell in love with the tool. And this is like almost 20 years ago. So I used tapping for a long time. EFT is the official term, emotional freedom techniques. And people usually call it tapping because we use our fingers and we use meridian points in the body. So we use different points in the body that come from traditional Chinese medicine. So anyone familiar with acupuncture, we use 12 to 24, sometimes more points in the body that acupuncturists use, or traditional Chinese medicine. That's where we borrow them from. And we use our fingers to tap in those points to first and foremost regulate your nervous system. So, what does regulate your nervous system mean? Your nervous system, as we know, and for us, when people say, "Ay, es muy nerviosa," it's probably because you have anxiety in some way. Cuando decimos que estamos muy nerviosos is because our nervous system is likely activated. And when our nervous system is activated, that means that there's our amygdala, which is our alert system that we have in our brain, is signaling that there's something that doesn't feel safe in our world. And so, being a kid of immigrants, being an eldest daughter, feeling the pressures of the world, living in a modern world that's going through so much, our amygdala is constantly thinking that we're not safe. And so that puts us into fight, flight, freeze, fawn mode. We don't realize this. Many times we're used to this because this is the norm, to just exist in spaces that are just not necessarily safe. And so, tapping, the first principle when we use our fingers and the points in the body, and we also use words, it allows our nervous system, our amygdala, to calm down. It tells our body that we exist and can exist in a place of safety first. And once our body comes down, our thoughts stop racing a lot, our breathing slows down, our heart rate also slows down. And that gets us to a place of what we call regulation, when you can actually, your executive function, which is your frontal cortex, can work the way that it's supposed to. It's not working to survive, it's working to help you thrive in life, which is what we're supposed to do. So that's kind of like the summary.
That is so powerful. Oh, I'm glad you explained it because I knew it was tied something with the nervous system. See, from my
Yay.
tapping, previous tapping that I've done. So I'm like, yeah, I think that's what it is. You said nervous system when you were talking about it earlier, and I'm like, tapping. That's where it's
Uh-huh.
connected somehow. It connected, and so for those, because I know when I was introduced to tapping, I was like, woo woo, a
It's
little too woo
very,
woo for
yeah,
me, like, so for that person, because and I'm that person that was not,
into it.
like, especially starting, I didn't consider myself woo woo. Even though mi familia me llaman bruja because I can sense different things. I don't know, that's for another conversation,
Uh-huh.
but I never considered. So anything that was woo-woo, I would just like, my hands would put,
Mhm.
I would put up a barrier. But there was a point in my life where it was just that nervousness, the anxiety. It was
Mhm.
rough. It was rough. So I'm like, why not? Let me
For
just
sure.
try it. What's the worst thing that could happen? And definitely has been helpful. For some reason, I haven't continued it, but I'm glad we're having this conversation. So for those that feel it's like too woo woo, like what words do you have for them?
I love the people that think that because what happens, the reason why, and I've already mentioned, I grew up with a brujo dad, and I was introduced to energy very young because this is who I grew up with. And I also always was exposed to people thinking that he was, quote, crazy because he would always talk about
Mm.
energy before like people talked about energy. People were like, now spirituality is a thing. So this is when I was like 6 years old that he was talking about metaphysics and Reiki and like all these things. And so I also stemmed away a lot from what we call the woo stuff because I didn't want to be told I was crazy. For the people that think that tapping is woo, I always bring it back to the body. And I think for me that's why I connect a lot for to with this tool more so than meditation, more so than breath work, more so than
Mm.
other things that are quote considered woo because it's a somatic tool. So we feel it in the body. And there's no questioning about what you're feeling in your body because that's true. That's not necessarily woo. It's not something that you're thinking, it's something that you are feeling. And there's science behind it because there's evidence that shows that trauma is stored in the body. And when we tap, what I tell people, especially the skeptics that are like, this is some BS that you're just making things up. I tell them, we don't have to go into the depths of your thoughts. We don't have to go into the woo part. We can very much do so. I do advanced tapping that we can like do very like crazy shit, but we don't have to do that. The first step is to feel back into your body. Just get back to your body. That's the first step to get into the connection with the self is to acknowledge that we have a body. And that's what I would say to the skeptics. Just give yourself the chance to feel again because we think too much. We exist in the head too much. And so the invitation when with tapping is to give yourself permission to feel the body.
Love it. And so let's connect the tapping to how could we use it as a tool to incorporate in our financial lives? Because we know we now have learned that it helps regulate our nervous
Mhm.
system. So it helps calms us. So if you can explain, how do you see that working for our financial lives, whether we're in deep, just deep debt. Did I
Mhm.
say that right? Deep into debt or just in a lot of debt?
Tenemos
Or
deudas.
we're feeling the living paycheck to paycheck, whatever our financial situation may be. How can we incorporate tapping when it comes to our financial lives?
So I'll bring it back to the body because when we are in financial stress, whatever that is, whether it's debt or living paycheck to paycheck or without a job or we have lots of bills, whatever that is, money is an activator. The idea of money as a tool, when we think of money, our body has a reaction. Even when we tell people like, what if you win $1 million tomorrow? There's a visceral body type reaction that comes. Even if we tell people, what if you wake up and you have zero money in your bank? There's a physical reaction in the body. And so, how tapping could support someone dealing with financial stress is first to regulate your nervous system. Because remember, our brain, our frontal cortex, when our amygdala is activated and when psychologists call the hood is lifted, we are in a place of survival. And so, where tapping can be supportive is to get your body to a place of regulation, of ease. So then you can make better decisions for you, not from a place of stress and desperation and lack, but more so from a place of groundedness first to regulate your nervous system and then take action. That would be like the basics. There's advanced work
I
with
love
EFT
it.
when it comes. I've done a lot of work on money because it's actually
I can tell.
yeah, and tapping. So it's actually one thing that I can leave people with. Your money stories are very tied to your self-worth. And so a lot of times how we we're gonna get a little hold on just a little bit, but really reflect on how you treat money and how is that connection to your own self-worth.
And that's something that we have to
Mhm.
reflect on. I
That's
mean,
y'all's
because right now
homework.
maybe nothing comes Exactly. Maybe nothing comes to our mind because we're not ready or we're not in a place where we can just hear ourselves clearly, if you
Mhm.
will. But definitely, as you're listening, after you finish listening to this episode, do some journaling around that and just let your mind flow and write whatever comes to your mind with that prompt. Pam, this has been so fantastic. And I'm so glad I had you here because I knew you were the person to have this type of conversation with the work. Thank you
Thank you
so
so
much.
much.
You're
Thank you.
awesome.
This was awesome. It's great to be on the other side.
I hope that with this conversation today, you feel armed in terms of really understanding what tapping is and how it really can help you give you a sense of calmness when something is stressing you out, especially when it comes to your finances. It's going to help you in all areas of your life, but I want you to also consider it when you are feeling some overwhelm with your finances. I also encourage you to connect with Pam, especially if you really resonated with everything she said. She is fabulous. You can go to her website, which is Café con Pam, and that is going to be linked in today's show notes. And you can also check her out on Instagram. She's all over the place. She's fantastic, as you heard. Next week, we will be talking about paychecks and what you need to be doing as soon as you get paid. So we're going to be talking about really establishing a routine, a paycheck routine that will help serve you and your finances in a better way. So don't miss that one. Bueno, pues that is everything. Thank you so much for checking out this podcast in this conversation in today's episode. I know you have a lot of podcasts to choose from, but you chose to hang out with us. You can check out the show notes over at jenhemphill.com/391. That is jenhemphill.com/391. Remember that being the reina starts now simply by claiming it. I believe in you, and so should you. Nos hablaremos el próximo jueves. Ciao.